The body cam footage starts rolling at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night in October. Through the grainy police camera, you can see my daughter Madison sitting in the back of a patrol car, mascara streaked down her cheeks, her hands cuffed behind her back. What you can't see is me, standing 20 feet away, watching my entire world collapse in real time. Because 3 hours earlier, I had discovered that my grandmother's diamond engagement ring, the one piece of jewelry I treasured above everything else, was missing from my bedroom drawer. And now I was watching my 16-year-old daughter being arrested for selling it to buy fentanyl. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. My name is Rebecca Torres, and until 6 months ago, I thought I had everything figured out. I'm a registered nurse at Phoenix General Hospital, working the night shift in the ICU. It's demanding work, but it pays well enough to support Madison and myself in our small house in Tempe, Arizona. Madison's father, my ex-husband Derek, moved to Portland 3 years ago for a job opportunity and rarely calls, let alone visits. So it's been just the two of us. And honestly, I thought we had a pretty good relationship. Madison was always a bright kid. Not just book smart, but socially intelligent too. She made friends easily, got decent grades without much effort, and seemed to navigate high school with the kind of confidence I never had at her age. She played varsity soccer, had a part-time job at a local coffee shop, and even talked about studying psychology in college. When people asked me about her, I would beam with pride. Madison is going places, I'd say. She's got her head straight. The first sign something was wrong came in late April. Madison had always been responsible about her curfew, 10 p.m. on school nights, midnight on weekends. It wasn't that she never pushed boundaries, but when she did, she'd text me with some elaborate explanation about why she needed an extra hour. The communication was there. But that Tuesday night in April, midnight came and went with no word from her. Then 1 a.m., then 2 a.m. I called her phone repeatedly, straight to voicemail every time. I texted her friends, the ones whose numbers I had, but most of them claimed they hadn't seen her. Finally, around 2:30 a.m., I heard her key in the front door. She slipped in quietly, probably hoping I'd be asleep, but I was sitting on the couch in the dark waiting for her. "Where were you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Madison jumped, clearly startled. In the dim light from the street lamp outside, I could see her more clearly. Her eyes looked different, glassy, unfocused. Her movement seemed sluggish, like she was moving through water. "Oh, hey, Mom, sorry, my phone died and Jessica's car broke down. We had to wait for her dad to come pick us up." It was a plausible explanation, the kind of teenage mishap that happens all the time. But something felt off. Madison was usually animated when she told stories, gesturing with her hands, providing unnecessary details. This explanation was delivered in a flat, mechanical way, like she was reading from a script. "Are you feeling okay?" I asked. "You look tired." "Yeah, just exhausted. Can I go to bed?" She hurried upstairs before I could respond, and I heard her bedroom door close with a soft click. I told myself I was overreacting. Teenagers stay out late. Teenagers come home tired and moody. It was probably nothing. But over the next few weeks, these late nights became more frequent. Madison's explanations grew more elaborate and less believable. Jessica's car seemed to break down an unusual amount. Group study sessions ran later and later. Madison started sleeping until noon on weekends, emerging from her room only to grab food from the kitchen before disappearing again. Her grades started slipping too. Madison had always been a solid B-plus student without much effort, but her first semester junior year report card showed 3 C's and a D in chemistry. When I brought it up, she shrugged it off. "Chemistry is really hard, Mom, and Mr. Patterson is a terrible teacher. Like, literally everyone is failing his class." I made a mental note to email Mr. Patterson, but between my 12-hour shifts at the hospital and trying to manage everything at home, it slipped through the cracks. Madison seemed to sense my distraction and started pushing boundaries more boldly. The coffee shop job disappeared first. Madison told me she'd been laid off due to budget cuts, but when I happened to drive by the shop a few days later, I saw her former coworker, Emma, working behind the counter. When I asked Emma about it later, she looked uncomfortable and mumbled something about Madison just not showing up anymore. Then Madison started asking for money more frequently. $20 here, $40 there. She always had reasonable explanations: gas money, lunch with friends, a new textbook she needed for class. I gave it to her without much thought. $20 wasn't worth a fight, and I wanted to maintain the peace between us. But the requests became more frequent and larger. $60 for a group dinner, $100 for a school trip I'd never heard her mention before. When I asked to see the permission slip for the trip, Madison became defensive. God, Mom, why don't you trust me? When have I ever lied to you about school stuff? The irony of that question would haunt me later. The physical changes were subtle at first. Madison had always been naturally thin, but by June, she looked almost gaunt. Her cheekbones were more pronounced, her clothes hung looser on her frame. When I asked if she was eating enough, she rolled her eyes. "I'm fine, Mom. I'm just growing, and soccer season is starting soon, so I'm trying to get in shape." But soccer season came and went, and Madison quit the team after 2 weeks. She claimed she wasn't enjoying it anymore, that the coach was too demanding, that she wanted to focus on her academics instead. This from the girl who had lived and breathed soccer since she was 8 years old. Her sleep schedule became completely erratic. Some nights she'd be out until 3 a.m., other nights she'd fall asleep on the couch at 7 p.m. and sleep for 14 hours straight. Her mood swings became more extreme too. One moment she'd be chatty and affectionate, helping me with dinner and asking about my day at work. The next moment she'd be irritable and withdrawn, snapping at me for asking simple questions. "How was school today?" "Fine." "What did you do?" "Nothing." "Did you eat lunch?" "Jesus, Mom, why are you interrogating me?" The worst part was how she looked at me sometimes. Madison had always had warm, expressive brown eyes that crinkled at the corners when she smiled. But increasingly, when she looked at me, her eyes seemed cold and calculating, like she was trying to figure out what I knew or what I might discover. In July, I started noticing small things going missing around the house. Nothing major at first. A $20 bill I'd left on the kitchen counter, some loose change from my purse. I assumed I'd misplaced them or spent them without remembering. But then my backup credit card disappeared from my wallet. When I asked Madison if she'd seen it, she seemed genuinely confused. "Why would I take your credit card, Mom? I have my own money." I felt guilty for even asking. Madison had never stolen from me before. Why would she start now? The credit card turned up a week later in Madison's backpack, which she'd left on the kitchen table while she showered. I wasn't snooping. I was just moving it so I could clear the table for dinner. But when I picked up the bag, the card fell out of an open side pocket. My hands were shaking as I held it. There could be an innocent explanation, I told myself. Maybe Madison had found it somewhere and forgot to give it back to me. Maybe she'd borrowed it for something and meant to ask permission but forgot. But when I checked the credit card statement online that night, I found 3 charges I didn't recognize. 2 were at gas stations across town, places I never went. The third was at a downtown convenience store for $47, an odd amount that suggested it wasn't just snacks or drinks. I confronted Madison the next morning. She was sitting at the kitchen table, still in her pajamas, scrolling through her phone while eating cereal. "Madison, I found my credit card in your backpack." She looked up, and for just a split second, I saw panic flash across her face before she composed herself. "Oh, right. I found it in the couch cushions and meant to give it back to you. Sorry, I totally forgot." "There are charges on it I didn't make." The silence stretched between us for what felt like an eternity. Madison set down her spoon and looked directly at me. "What kind of charges?" Her voice was steady, but I could see her jaw clench slightly. "Gas stations and a convenience store downtown." "Mom, I have no idea what you're talking about. Maybe someone else used it, like maybe it got cloned or something?"
She was lying. I knew she was lying, but proving it felt impossible. And the thought of my own daughter stealing from me was so painful that part of me wanted to believe her explanation, no matter how flimsy it was. The charges were made while the card was missing from my wallet, I said quietly. Madison's face flushed red. So you're accusing me of stealing from me? I'm trying to understand what happened.
A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. What happened is that someone probably skimmed your card information, Mom. It happens all the time. But thanks for automatically assuming it was me. She stood up abruptly, leaving her half-eaten cereal on the table, and stormed upstairs. A few minutes later, I heard her bedroom door slam. That afternoon, while Madison was supposedly at her friend Chloe's house, I called the bank and reported the charges as fraudulent. But I also quietly removed all the credit cards from my wallet and put them in a locked box in my bedroom closet. I felt sick doing it, like I was admitting that I couldn't trust my own daughter. August brought a new level of chaos. Madison's lies became bolder and more frequent. She told me she was staying overnight at Jessica's house, but when Jessica's mom called looking for her the next day, it became clear Madison had never been there. She claimed to have a summer job at a retail store in the mall, but when I tried to visit her at work with coffee and a snack, the manager told me no one by Madison's name had ever worked there. The physical changes became impossible to ignore. Madison's weight loss was dramatic now. She'd probably dropped 20 pounds in 3 months. Her skin had a grayish pallor and dark circles shadowed her eyes. She seemed to get sick pretty frequently, complaining of stomach aches and headaches. When I suggested taking her to see our family doctor, she became agitated. "I'm fine, Mom. I don't need a doctor. I'm just stressed about school starting." But school had always excited Madison. She loved picking out new supplies, reconnecting with friends after summer break, hearing about her new classes. This year, as August wound down, she seemed anxious and distracted. The breaking point came on a Sunday evening in late August. I was getting ready for my night shift at the hospital when I realized I couldn't find my grandmother's ring. It was a simple but elegant piece, a 1-carat diamond solitaire in a white gold setting that my grandmother had worn every day for 60 years until she passed away when I was in college. She'd left it to me in her will, and it was the most valuable thing I owned, both financially and sentimentally. I kept it in a small jewelry box on my dresser, along with a few other pieces, my everyday earrings, a necklace Derek had given me for our anniversary years ago, my watch. I didn't wear the ring often because I was afraid of losing it at work, but I liked knowing it was there, and sometimes I'd put it on for special occasions. The jewelry box was still there, but it was empty, except for my everyday earrings. The ring was gone, along with the necklace and my watch. I searched everywhere. I tore apart my bedroom, checking under the bed, in the laundry hamper, behind the dresser. I searched the bathroom, thinking maybe I'd taken the jewelry off while washing my face and forgotten where I put it. I even searched Madison's room while she was in the shower, feeling like a criminal as I rifled through her dresser drawers and looked under her mattress. I found nothing. When Madison came downstairs, her hair still damp from the shower, I was sitting on the living room couch with my head in my hands. "Mom? What's wrong?" I looked up at her. Standing there in her oversized t-shirt and shorts, she looked so young and innocent. For a moment, I almost convinced myself that I was wrong to suspect her. I said carefully, some of my jewelry is missing, including Grandma Rose's ring. Madison's face went completely blank. Not surprised, not concerned, just blank. Like someone had erased all expression from her features. "That's weird. Are you sure you put it somewhere else?" "I've looked everywhere, Madison. It's not in the house." We stared at each other for a long moment. I was waiting for her to offer to help me look, to suggest we call the police, to show some kind of emotional response to the fact that my most treasured possession had disappeared.
she just stood there, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. "Maybe it fell behind the dresser or something," she said eventually. I checked behind the dresser. "Well, I don't know what to tell you, Mom. I haven't seen it." That night at work, I couldn't focus on anything. I kept thinking about Madison's reaction, or rather, her lack of reaction. If my most precious piece of jewelry had gone missing, wouldn't a caring daughter be upset for me? Wouldn't she want to help search? Wouldn't she at least ask questions about when I'd last seen it? During my break, I sat in my car in the hospital parking garage and called my sister Karen, who lives in Denver. Karen is 5 years older than me and has always been the practical one in our family. When I told her what was happening, she was quiet for a long time. "Rebecca, I think you need to consider that Madison might be using drugs." The words hit me like a physical blow. "That's ridiculous, Karen. Madison doesn't do drugs. She's never even shown interest in drinking." The weight loss, the mood swings, the lying, the stealing, these are classic signs. And if she's desperate enough to steal your jewelry, she might be pretty deep. "She's just going through a rough patch," I insisted. "Lots of teenagers act out." "Not like this," Karen said gently. "Rebecca, I know this is hard to hear, but I think you need to search her room more thoroughly, and maybe consider getting her tested." After I hung up, I sat in my car for another 20 minutes, trying to process what Karen had said. Drug use. It seemed impossible. Madison was smart. She had goals. She understood consequences. But as I mentally reviewed the past few months, all the strange behaviors and changes started forming a different pattern, a terrifying pattern that I'd been too naive or too scared to recognize. The next morning, while Madison was still asleep, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. I spent the day researching drug addiction symptoms online, and what I found made my stomach turn. Everything I read described Madison perfectly. The dramatic weight loss, the erratic sleep patterns, the lying, the stealing, the personality changes, it all fit. I also researched local pawn shops and jewelry stores, thinking I could track down my grandmother's ring. I made a list of every place within a 20-mile radius and started calling them, describing the ring and asking if anyone had tried to sell it recently.
On my 5th call, I hit pay dirt. A pawn shop in downtown Phoenix told me that a young woman matching Madison's description had sold a diamond ring there 2 days earlier for $300, a fraction of what the ring was actually worth. "Can you describe her?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Young, maybe 16 or 17, brown hair, really thin. She seemed pretty nervous, kept looking around like she was afraid someone was watching her. She had an ID that said Madison Torres." My heart stopped. Madison Torres? My daughter had used her real name to sell my grandmother's ring. "Is there security camera footage?" I asked. "Yeah, we keep footage for 30 days. Are you planning to file a police report?" I hung up without answering because I honestly didn't know. Filing a police report meant admitting that my daughter was a thief and probably a drug addict. It meant involving law enforcement in our family crisis. It meant Madison could end up with a criminal record. But it also meant getting answers. And maybe, if Madison was really using drugs, it meant getting her help before things got worse. I spent the rest of the afternoon agonizing over what to do. Part of me wanted to confront Madison directly, to give her a chance to explain and maybe voluntarily enter treatment. But another part of me, the part that had been hurt and lied to for months, wanted justice. My grandmother's ring wasn't just valuable. It was irreplaceable. It was my connection to a woman who had helped raise me, who had taught me about strength and resilience and love. That evening, when Madison came home around dinner time, I was waiting for her in the kitchen. "We need to talk," I said. She immediately became defensive. "About what?" "I know you sold my jewelry." For a moment, Madison just stared at me. Then she began to laugh, a harsh, bitter sound that didn't match her 16 years. You know. How do you know? I called pawn shops. One of them remembered you. Madison's laughter stopped abruptly. So what are you going to do about it? Her voice was cold, almost challenging. This wasn't the daughter I'd raised. This was a stranger wearing Madison's face. I want you to tell me why. I want you to tell me what you needed the money for. Madison rolled her eyes. Does it matter? It matters. To me. We stared at each other across the kitchen table. The silence stretched on until it became unbearable. Fine, Madison said finally. I needed money, so I sold some jewelry. It's not like you ever wear that stuff anyway. It was my grandmother's ring, Madison. You know how much that meant to me? It's just a stupid ring, Mom. It was just sitting there collecting dust. The casual cruelty of her words took my breath away. But underneath the cruelty, I could see something else in her eyes. Fear. Madison was afraid, and she was lashing out to hide it. What did you need the money for? I asked again. None of your business. Madison, if you were in some kind of trouble, I can help you, but I need you to be honest with me. I don't need your help, and I don't have to answer your questions. She started to walk away, but I called after her. If you leave this house, I'm calling the police. Madison stopped in the doorway and turned around. Her face was flushed with anger, but her hands were shaking. You'd really call the cops on me? I don't want to, but Madison, I need to know what's going on. I need to know that you're safe. I'm fine. No, you're not. You've lost 20 pounds in 3 months. You lie to me constantly. You stole from me. That's not fine. Madison's composure finally cracked. Tears started streaming down her face, but her voice remained defiant. You don't understand anything. Then help me understand. But instead of answering, Madison ran upstairs to her room and slammed the door. I heard the lock click and then silence. I sat at the kitchen table for another hour trying to decide what to do. Finally, I picked up my phone and dialed 911. The police arrived 18 minutes after I made the call. 2 officers, a tall man with graying hair who introduced himself as Officer Martinez, and a younger woman, Officer Chen. They sat across from me in my living room while I explained the situation, my voice shaking as I described finding the pawn shop receipt and Madison's reaction when I confronted her.
Mrs. Torres, Officer Martinez said gently, I understand this is difficult, but we need to speak with your daughter directly. Is she still upstairs? I nodded, unable to speak. The reality of what I was doing, bringing police into my home to investigate my own child, felt surreal. Officer Chen went upstairs to knock on Madison's door while Officer Martinez stayed with me, asking for details about the missing jewelry and documentation of its value. I showed him photos of my grandmother's ring that I'd taken for insurance purposes, and he copied down the information from the pawn shop receipt I'd obtained that afternoon. Mom? Madison's voice came from the top of the stairs, small and confused. Why are there police here? Madison, can you come down here, please? Officer Chen called up. We just need to ask you a few questions. I watched my daughter descend the stairs slowly, her hand gripping the banister. She was wearing an oversized hoodie and sweatpants, and her face looked pale and drawn. When she reached the living room, she avoided making eye contact with me. Madison Torres, Officer Martinez asked. She nodded. We understand there's been some missing jewelry from your home. Your mother believes you might know something about it. Madison glanced at me quickly, then back at the officer. I already told her I don't know anything about her stupid jewelry. Madison, Officer Chen said, sitting forward in her chair, we have security footage from Perry's pawn shop showing someone who looks a lot like you selling a diamond ring on Tuesday afternoon. The person used your name and showed an ID with your photo. The color drained from Madison's face. She looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Not anger or defiance, but something like desperation. "I want a lawyer," she said quietly. Officer Martinez exchanged a glance with his partner. "Madison, you're not under arrest. We're just trying to understand what happened. If you voluntarily tell us about the ring, it might help us resolve this without formal charges." Madison sat down heavily on the couch across from the officers, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. For a long moment, no one spoke. "I needed money," she said finally, her voice barely audible. "For what?" Officer Chen asked. Madison looked at me again, and this time her eyes filled with tears. "I can't tell you." "Honey," I said, moving to sit beside her on the couch, "whatever it is, we can figure it out together." She flinched away from me. "No, we can't, Mom. You don't understand." Officer Martinez leaned forward. "Madison, are you using drugs?" The question hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Madison's whole body seemed to shrink into itself. She started, then stopped. "I can't." "Can't what?" Officer Chen asked gently. "I can't tell you. They'll hurt me." Officer Martinez and Officer Chen exchanged another look, this one more serious. "Who will hurt you, Madison?" Madison started crying harder, her shoulders shaking with sobs. "I owe them money, a lot of money, and they said if I don't pay them back by Friday, they're going to—" She couldn't finish the sentence. My blood turned to ice. "Madison, who are you talking about? Who did you borrow money from?" "I didn't borrow it. They gave me stuff on credit, and now they want payment, and I don't have it." Officer Chen pulled out a notepad. "Madison, I need you to tell me who they are. Names, descriptions, where you met them." "I can't. You don't understand what these people are capable of." Officer Martinez stood up. "Madison, if you're being threatened by drug dealers, we can protect you, but we need information to help you." Madison looked up at him with a bitter laugh. "Protect me? How? Are you going to follow me around 24 hours a day? Are you going to watch my house every night? Because that's what it would take." "Madison," I said, my voice cracking, "what have you gotten yourself into?" She turned to me with eyes full of pain. "Mom, I tried to stop. I really tried, but it's not that simple. It's not like in those stupid after-school specials where someone just decides to quit and everything's fine." Officer Chen sat down next to Madison on her other side. "What are you using, Madison?" Madison was quiet for so long I thought she wasn't going to answer. Then, in a whisper, she said, "Fentanyl." The word hit me like a sledgehammer. Fentanyl. I'd seen the overdose cases in the ER, young people, barely older than Madison, coming in blue and unresponsive. Some we saved, many we didn't. "How long?" I managed to ask. "Since March. It started with pills. This guy at school, Trevor, he had leftover Percocet from when he got his wisdom teeth out. He gave me a few when I was stressed about the SATs. They made me feel calm, like everything was okay." Officer Martinez was taking notes now. "Tell me about Trevor." "Trevor Hoffman. He's a senior at Sunrise High, but he's not a dealer or anything. He just had leftover pills. After those ran out, I wanted more, so I asked around, and this girl Kayla told me she knew someone who could get them."
"Who?" Officer Chen asked. "This older guy, Marcus. I don't know his last name. He hangs out at the Circle K on Van Buren sometimes. Kayla introduced us and he sold me pills for like $50 each. I felt sick. $50 per pill. That explained the constant requests for money, the missing cash from my wallet. But pills are expensive," Madison continued, "and Marcus said he could get me something cheaper that was just as good. He called it blues, but they weren't real pills. They were pressed with fentanyl." Officer Martinez looked up from his notes. "How much were you using?" "At first, like 1 pill every few days, but then I needed more to feel the same way. By June, I was using it every day, sometimes twice a day." Officer Chen asked, How much do you owe this, Marcus? Madison's voice dropped to a whisper again. $800. $800. For a 16-year-old with no real income, it might as well have been $8,000. Madison, Officer Martinez said, we need you to help us find Marcus. If he's selling fentanyl to kids, we need to get him off the street. Madison shook her head violently. No, absolutely not. You don't know what he's like. Last week, this kid named Jamie couldn't pay what he owed, and Marcus had his friends beat him up so bad he ended up in the hospital. What hospital? Officer Chen asked quickly. I don't know, but Kayla showed me pictures. His face it was really bad. I realized I was holding my breath. My daughter wasn't just using drugs. She was trapped in a world of violence and threats that I couldn't even comprehend. Officer Martinez closed his notepad. Madison, here's what's going to happen. We're going to take you down to the station so you can give us a full statement about Marcus and his operation. Your cooperation could help save other kids from getting hooked. And then what? You arrest Marcus and his friends come looking for me? We'll discuss protection options, but right now, you need to focus on getting clean. Have you ever tried to quit? Madison nodded miserably. A bunch of times. The longest I made it was 4 days, but the withdrawal, it's like having the flu 1,000 times, and everything hurts, and you can't sleep, and all you can think about is making it stop. There are treatment programs, I said desperately. Rehab centers, medication-assisted treatment. We can figure this out. Madison looked at me with something that might have been hope. Really? You'd do that for me? Even after everything I've done? Madison, you're my daughter. Of course I'll do whatever it takes to help you get better. Officer Martinez stood up. Mrs. Torres, I'm going to be honest with you. Madison committed theft, and normally we'd have to arrest her for that. But given the circumstances, the drug addiction, the threats from dealers, I think we can work something out. If Madison agrees to cooperate with our investigation and enters a treatment program, we might be able to arrange a diversion agreement instead of formal charges. What's a diversion agreement? I asked. Basically, Madison would plead guilty to the theft charge, but instead of going to juvenile detention, she'd be required to complete drug treatment and community service. If she successfully completes the program, the charges get dismissed. Madison looked up sharply. I'd have to plead guilty? Yes, but it's better than the alternative. If we arrest you tonight, you'll spend at least a few days in juvenile detention while we sort everything out, and that's assuming you don't get charged with anything else related to the drug activity. Madison was quiet for a long time, processing this information. Finally, she looked at me. Mom, what do you think I should do? It was the first time in months that she'd asked for my opinion about anything important. Despite everything that had happened, I felt a flicker of hope that maybe, somehow, we could get through this together. I think, I said carefully, that you should take the deal. Get the help you need, and let's put this behind us. Madison nodded slowly. Okay, I'll do it. Officer Martinez called for a juvenile transport van while Officer Chen explained the next steps. Madison would be taken to the police station for processing and to give her statement about Marcus and his drug operation. She'd spend the night in juvenile detention, and then tomorrow morning we'd meet with a juvenile court counselor to discuss treatment options and set up the diversion agreement. Can I pack a bag? Madison asked. Officer Chen nodded. Keep it simple, just basic toiletries and a change of clothes. Madison went upstairs to pack while I sat in my living room trying to process everything that just happened. 6 months ago, my biggest worry was Madison getting her homework done on time. Now, she was addicted to one of the deadliest drugs on the street and owed money to violent dealers. When Madison came back downstairs with a small duffel bag, she looked younger than her 16 years. The defiance and anger that had marked our recent interactions were gone, replaced by exhaustion and fear. Mom, she said as Officer Chen prepared to lead her outside. I'm really sorry. About the ring, about lying to you, about everything. I know you probably hate me right now, but I want you to know that I never meant it to go this far.
Basically, Madison would plead guilty to the theft charge, but instead of going to juvenile detention, she'd be required to complete drug treatment and community service. If she successfully completes the program, the charges get dismissed. Madison looked up sharply. I'd have to plead guilty? Yes, Officer Chen said. But it's better than the alternative. If we arrest you tonight, you'll spend at least a few days in juvenile detention while we sort everything out. And that's assuming you don't get charged with anything else related to the drug activity. Madison was quiet for a long time, processing this information. Finally, she looked at me. Mom, what do you think I should do? It was the first time in months that she'd asked for my opinion about anything important. Despite everything that had happened, I felt a flicker of hope that maybe, somehow, we could get through this together. I think, I said carefully, that you should take the deal. Get the help you need, and let's put this behind us. Madison nodded slowly. Okay. I'll do it. Officer Martinez called for a juvenile transport van while Officer Chen explained the next steps. Madison would be taken to the police station for processing and to give her statement about Marcus and his drug operation. She'd spend the night in juvenile detention, and then tomorrow morning we'd meet with a juvenile court counselor to discuss treatment options and set up the diversion agreement. Can I pack a bag? Madison asked. Officer Chen nodded. Keep it simple. Just basic toiletries. And a change of clothes. Madison went upstairs to pack while I sat in my living room, trying to process everything that had just happened. 6 months ago, my biggest worry was Madison getting her homework done on time. Now she was addicted to one of the deadliest drugs on the street and owed money to violent dealers. When Madison came back downstairs with a small duffel bag, she looked younger than her 16 years. The defiance and anger that had marked our recent interactions were gone, replaced by exhaustion and fear. Mom, she said as Officer Chen prepared to lead her outside. I'm really sorry. About the ring, about lying to you, about everything. I know you probably hate me right now, but I want you to know that I never meant for it to go this far. I walked over to her and pulled her into a hug, not caring that the officers were watching. Madison, I don't hate you. I love you. And we're going to get through this. She hugged me back fiercely, and for a moment she felt like my little girl. Again, instead of the stranger she'd become over the past few months. Will you visit me? She whispered. Every day they'll let me, I promised. Officer Chen gently separated us. We need to go now. I watched from my front window as they led Madison to the police car. She didn't resist or argue. She just got in the back seat and stared straight ahead as they drove away. After the police left, I sat alone in my living room for hours, replaying the entire evening in my mind. Part of me felt relief that the truth was finally out, that Madison would hopefully get the help she needed. But another part of me felt like I'd failed as a mother. How had I missed the signs for so long? How had my daughter become addicted to fentanyl without me realizing what was happening? Around midnight, I called my sister Karen in Denver. Rebecca? What's wrong? Karen answered on the second ring, instantly alert. I told her everything. The police visit, Madison's confession, the drug dealers, the treatment program. Karen listened without interrupting, occasionally making soft sounds of sympathy or shock. How are you holding up? She asked when I finished. I don't know, I admitted. I feel like I don't even know my own daughter anymore. The girl who confessed to everything tonight, that was Madison. But the girl who stole from me and lied for months, I don't know who that was. That was Madison too, Karen said gently. That was Madison on drugs. Addiction changes people, Rebecca. It makes them do things they never thought they'd do. I keep thinking about all the signs I missed. The weight loss, the mood swings, the constant need for money. How did I not see it? Because you're her mother, not a drug counselor. And because Madison was actively hiding it from you. Don't blame yourself for not recognizing something you've never encountered before. We talked for another hour, with Karen helping me research treatment facilities and support groups for families of addicts. By the time we hung up, I felt slightly more hopeful that maybe, with the right help, Madison could recover from this, but as I finally went to bed around 2 a.m., I couldn't shake the image of my daughter in the back of that police car, looking so small and scared. And I couldn't stop thinking about her words, they'll hurt me. Tomorrow, I would have to figure out how to protect her from drug dealers while also helping her get clean. It felt like an impossible task, but Madison was my daughter, and I wasn't going to give up on her even if it killed me. The Maricopa County Juvenile Detention Center smelled like disinfectant and despair. I arrived at 9 a.m. sharp the next morning, clutching a bag of snacks and toiletries that I'd spent 2 hours carefully selecting. The visiting room was a sterile space with plastic chairs and tables bolted to the floor, monitored by cameras mounted in every corner. Madison looked terrible. Her hair was greasy and pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she was wearing an orange jumpsuit that hung loose on her thin frame. But worse than her physical appearance were her eyes. They darted constantly around the room, and her hands shook as she sat down across from me. How did you sleep? I asked, immediately regretting The stupid question. I didn't, Madison said flatly. My cellmate cried all night, and the withdrawal is getting bad. Everything hurts, Mom. Like, everything. She demonstrated by trying to lift the water bottle I'd brought her, but her hands were shaking so badly. She could barely grip it. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and I could see a thin sheen of sweat on her forehead despite the air conditioning. The counselor said we're meeting with someone about treatment options this afternoon, I told her. We're going to get you help. Madison nodded, but she looked skeptical. Mom, there's something else. Something I didn't tell the police last night. My stomach dropped. What? Marcus doesn't just sell to high school kids. He's got people everywhere. Middle schools, community colleges, even some of the staff at the fast food places where kids work. If he finds out I talked to the cops. She shuddered. He's going to know it was me. There were only like 5 people who knew about the $800 I owed. The weight of what she was saying settled over me like a blanket of ice. Madison, are you saying you're not safe even here? Probably not anywhere, she said quietly. Marcus has connections. I heard him bragging once about having people inside the juvenile detention system, inside some of the rehab centers. He keeps track of kids who might rat him out. I felt my carefully constructed hope beginning to crumble. So what are you saying? That you can't get treatment? I'm saying I need to be really careful about where I go and who I trust. Madison leaned forward, lowering her voice. Mom, promise me something. If anything happens to me, if I end up back on the street or if something goes wrong, promise me you won't blame yourself. This isn't your fault. Nothing is going to happen to you, I said firmly, though I wasn't sure I believed it. We're going to figure this out. At 2 p.m., we met with Janet Sullivan, a juvenile court counselor who specialized in drug cases. She was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude that reminded me of my favorite nursing supervisors. Madison, Janet said, reviewing the file in front of her, I've been doing this for 15 years, and I've seen kids recover from much worse situations than yours. But recovery requires complete honesty, both with me and with yourself. Are you ready for that? Madison nodded, though she still looked skeptical. Good. Now, I've reviewed your case with the police, and there are some complications. The drug operation you've described involves multiple jurisdictions and potentially some serious players. Detective Rodriguez from the Narcotics Division wants to meet with you next week to get more detailed information.
What kind of information? Madison asked nervously. Locations where you've seen Marcus, descriptions of his associates, details about how the operation works. The more you can tell them, the better they can protect you and shut down his network. Madison shifted in her chair. What if I don't want to be a snitch? Janet's expression grew stern. Madison, this isn't about snitching. This is about preventing other kids from getting hooked on fentanyl and preventing Marcus from expanding his operation. How many kids do you think he's dealing to right now? Madison was quiet for a moment, then said softly, a lot. Maybe 50 or 60 that I know of, probably more that I don't. 50 or 60 kids? Janet repeated. Some of them are probably younger than you. Some of them probably taking fentanyl for the first time because Marcus convinced them it was safe. Do you want their overdoses on your conscience? I watched Madison's face as Janet spoke. I could see her internal struggle, fear of retaliation versus guilt over what might happen to other kids. If I cooperate, Madison said finally, what kind of protection can you actually provide? Janet pulled out a thick folder. Several options. We could place you in a residential treatment facility outside of Arizona, somewhere Marcus and his people would have no reason to look for you. The program would last 6 months to a year, depending on your progress. What about school? Madison asked. Many facilities have educational programs that would allow you to continue working toward your high school diploma. Some even have partnerships with community colleges. I felt a spark of hope. That sounds like it could work. There's another option, Janet continued. We have a witness protection program specifically for juveniles who testify against drug dealers. It would mean relocating you and your mother to a different state, new identities, the works. But it's typically reserved for cases involving major trafficking organizations. Madison looked at me. Would you really move away from everything for me? The question broke my heart. Madison, you're my everything. I'll go wherever you need to go. Janet made some notes in her file.
There's one more thing we need to discuss. Madison, the police found something in your blood work from last night that concerns me. My blood pressure spiked. What kind of something? Fentanyl levels that suggest you're using much more than you told us yesterday. The amount in your system could have been fatal if you'd taken just a little bit more. Madison's face flushed red. I might have used a little more than usual yesterday. I was stressed about everything. Madison, Janet said seriously, this is exactly what I mean about complete honesty. If you're going to recover, you can't minimize or lie about your usage. It could literally kill you. I know, Madison said, tears starting to form in her eyes. I know it could kill me. I think about that every time I use. But when the withdrawal starts, when everything hurts and I can't think straight, I just want it to stop. Janet's expression softened. That's why we need to get you into a medically supervised detox program as soon as possible. The withdrawal from fentanyl can be dangerous if not properly managed. She handed me a packet of information about different treatment facilities. I've highlighted 3 programs that I think would be good fits for Madison. All of them have experience with fentanyl addiction, all of them have strong security measures, and all of them have good success rates for teenagers. I flipped through the materials. The facilities were in Utah, Oregon, and Colorado, all far enough from Arizona that Marcus wouldn't easily find Madison, but close enough that I could visit regularly. How soon could she start? I asked. If you choose the facility in Utah, they have an opening next Monday. The one in Colorado could take her next week as well. Oregon has a waiting list, but they're considered the gold standard for adolescent addiction treatment. Madison was reading over my shoulder. They all look expensive. Your insurance should cover most of it, and there are grants available for families who need additional financial assistance. For the first time in days, I felt like we might actually have a path forward. But then, Madison asked the question that had been nagging at me all morning. What happens if Marcus finds out where I am anyway? Janet was quiet for a moment. Madison, I'm not going to lie to you. There's always some risk. But these facilities have experience protecting kids from exactly this kind of situation. They have security protocols, restricted access, and staff who are trained to recognize potential threats. But no guarantees? No guarantees, Janet admitted. But doing nothing isn't an option either. If you stay on the street, if you keep using, you're going to die. That's not a possibility. That's a certainty. Fentanyl kills more than half of regular users within 2 years. The stark reality of that statistic hit me like a punch to the gut. More than half. Madison had been using it for 6 months already. I want to go to Utah, Madison said suddenly. It's the closest one, and if something happens, you can get there quickly. Are you sure? I asked.
Madison nodded. I'm tired of being scared all the time. I'm tired of lying and stealing and feeling like garbage. If I'm going to die anyway, I might as well die trying to get clean. Janet made arrangements for Madison to be transferred to the Utah facility the following Monday. She would spend the weekend in juvenile detention, finishing her detox under medical supervision, and then began the intensive treatment program. One more thing, Janet said as we prepared to leave. Madison, the police want to conduct a controlled buy operation with Marcus sometime in the next 2 weeks. They'd like your help setting it up. Madison's face went pale. You want me to call Marcus? Detective Rodriguez would explain all the details, but essentially, you'd call Marcus and arrange to buy drugs from him. The police would wire you for sound, follow you to the location, and arrest him during the transaction. That sounds incredibly dangerous, I said immediately. It is dangerous, Janet admitted. But it's also the best way to ensure that Marcus gets arrested with enough evidence to put him away for a long time. And Madison would be wearing a wire and have police backup the entire time. Madison was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands. If I do this, and Marcus gets arrested, What happens to all the kids who owe him money? His organization would probably fall apart, Janet said. Other dealers might try to take over his territory, but his specific network of clients would be left alone. Including the kids who owe money? Most likely, yes. Drug dealers don't usually collect debts from customers of arrested competitors. Too much heat. Madison looked at me. What do you think, Mom? I wanted to say, absolutely not. I wanted to wrap Madison in bubble wrap and hide her away somewhere safe until all of this blew over. But I also understood that this might be the only way to truly protect her and the other kids Marcus was exploiting. I think, I said carefully, that it's your decision. But if you do it, I want to be there. I want to be part of the backup team or whatever they call it. Janet shook her head. Mrs. Torres, civilians can't participate in police operations like that. Then I'll be sitting in the parking lot outside. I'm not letting my daughter do something this dangerous without being as close as I can get. Madison reached over and squeezed my hand. Thanks, Mom. Janet gathered her files. Think about it over the weekend. Detective Rodriguez will come by on Sunday to explain the operation in detail, and you can make your final decision then. As we left the courthouse, Madison turned to me. Mom, I know I've been terrible to you for months. I know I stole from you and lied to you and said awful things. But I need you to know that underneath all the drugs and the crazy behavior, I never stopped loving you. I stopped walking and pulled her into a hug right there on the courthouse steps. I never stopped loving you either, baby. Not for a single second. That evening, after Madison was taken back to juvenile detention, I drove to my sister Karen's house in Scottsdale. I needed to talk to someone who wasn't a police officer or a counselor or a court official. I needed to talk to my family. Karen listened to everything over dinner, occasionally asking clarifying questions, but mostly just letting me talk. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. You know, she said finally, when we were growing up, Mom used to say that the hardest part of being a parent wasn't dealing with the big dramatic crises. It was making the right decisions when you couldn't see all the consequences. What do you think I should do about the police operation? I asked. I think, she said slowly, that Madison needs to feel like she has some control over her own life again. She's been at the mercy of her addiction and these drug dealers for months. Maybe helping to arrest Marcus would give her some of her power back. Or maybe it would get her killed. Maybe, but Rebecca, she could die anyway, from an overdose, from violence related to the money she owes, from any number of things. At least this way, she'd be dying, if it came to that, while trying to protect other kids. We talked until almost midnight, going over every possible scenario and outcome. By the time I drove home, I'd made my decision. I would support whatever choice Madison made about cooperating with the police, but I would also make sure she understood that her safety was more important to me than justice or revenge or anything else. As I pulled into my driveway, I noticed a car parked across the street that I didn't recognize. It was too dark to see who was inside, but something about it made me uneasy. I sat in my car for a few minutes, watching, but the other car didn't move. Finally, I gathered my courage and got out, walking quickly to my front door. As I fumbled with my keys, I heard the other car's engine start up. By the time I turned around, it was driving away. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was a neighbor's friend or someone who had gotten lost. But as I locked my front door behind me and turned on every light in the house, I couldn't shake the feeling that Madison and I weren't the only ones making plans for the week ahead. Detective Rodriguez looked like someone who'd seen too much darkness in the world. He was a compact man in his 40s with prematurely gray hair and tired eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. When he arrived at the juvenile detention center on Sunday afternoon, he carried a briefcase full of equipment and a thick folder of surveillance photos. Madison, he said, settling into the plastic chair across from us, I want you to understand that what we're asking you to do is dangerous.
There's no sugarcoating that. But it's also the best chance we have to take down Marcus and his entire network. He opened the folder and spread out a series of photographs. "This is Marcus," he said, pointing to a picture of a thin man in his 20s with neck tattoos and gold teeth. "This is his operation."
The photo showed various locations around Phoenix. The Circle K on Van Buren, where Madison had first met Marcus, an apartment complex in South Phoenix, a house in Glendale with bars on the windows. Detective Rodriguez also showed us surveillance photos of Marcus with other people, including some who looked barely older than Madison herself. "We've been trying to build a case against Valdez for 8 months, Rodriguez continued, but he's smart. He uses kids as runners and middlemen, keeps his own hands relatively clean, and moves locations frequently. Every time we think we have enough evidence to arrest him, he disappears for a few weeks and surfaces somewhere else." Madison studied the photos carefully. "I recognize some of these people. That guy there, Carlos, he's the one who collects money when people can't pay. And that's the apartment where I went to buy pills a few times in July." "Excellent," Rodriguez said, making notes. "This is exactly the kind of information we need. Madison, if you agree to help us, here's how it would work." He pulled out a diagram of what looked like a shopping center. "Tomorrow afternoon, you would call Marcus and tell him you need to buy fentanyl. You'd arrange to meet him at this location. It's a strip mall in Tempe with good sight lines and multiple exit routes. We'd wire you for sound and position undercover officers throughout the area." "What if Marcus suspects something?" I asked. "What if he realizes it's a setup?" "That's always a risk," Rodriguez admitted, "but Marcus has been dealing with Madison for months. From his perspective, she's a regular customer who owes him money. It would make sense for her to want to buy more drugs, especially if she tells him she's got a new source of cash." Madison looked uncomfortable. "What am I supposed to tell him about where I got money? He knows I didn't have $800 last week." "You'd tell him you stole money from your mother's bank account. Keep it simple and believable." I flinched at the suggestion, even though I knew it was just a cover story. The idea of Madison using theft from me as an excuse, even a fake one, brought back all the pain from discovering my grandmother's ring was gone. "How long would the operation take?" Madison asked. 15 to 20 minutes from the time you call him to the time we arrest him. You'd make contact, exchange money for drugs, and then our team would move in. You'd be wearing a wire, so we'd hear everything in real time." Madison was quiet for several minutes, studying the photos and the diagram. Finally, she looked at me. "Mom, what do you think?" Every instinct I had as a mother screamed at me to say no, to tell Detective Rodriguez that Madison had been through enough, that she needed to focus on getting clean, that risking her life to catch a drug dealer wasn't worth it. But I also kept thinking about Janet Sullivan's words. 50 or 60 kids. How many more would Marcus hook if he stayed on the street? "I think," I said slowly, "that it has to be your choice. But if you decide to do it, I want every possible safety precaution in place." Rodriguez nodded. "Absolutely. Madison would be wearing 2 wires, one hidden in her clothing and a backup device. We'd have at least 8 officers positioned around the meeting site, including 2 sharpshooters on nearby rooftops. And Madison would have a panic signal. If she touches her left earring twice, we move in immediately, regardless if we have enough evidence yet." "What happens after you arrest Marcus?" Madison asked. "He'll be charged with distribution of a controlled substance, conspiracy, and probably several other felonies. With his prior record, he's looking at 15 to 20 years in federal prison." Madison took a deep breath. "And you really think this will protect other kids?" "Madison, last month alone, we know of 3 fentanyl overdoses involving teenagers in the Phoenix area. One of them died. She was 14 years old." Rodriguez's voice was quiet but intense. "Marcus is feeding poison to children for profit. This operation could save lives." Madison looked at the foes again, her jaw set with determination. "Okay, I'll do it." "Madison, are you sure?" I asked, my voice cracking slightly. "No," she said honestly. "I'm terrified, but I keep thinking about that 14-year-old girl who died. What if she was like me 6 months ago, just looking for something to help with stress or pain? What if Marcus told her the pills were safe?" Rodriguez gathered up the photos. "All right, tomorrow at 2 p.m., you'll call Marcus from the detention center. We'll coach you on exactly what to say.
The meeting will be scheduled for 4 p.m., which gives us time to get everyone in position. That night, I barely slept. I kept imagining everything that could go wrong. Marcus recognizing it was a setup, other dealers showing up unexpectedly, the wire malfunctioning at a critical moment. I also couldn't stop thinking about the mysterious car I'd seen outside my house. What if Marcus already suspected Madison was cooperating with police? At 1:30 the next afternoon, I was sitting in Detective Rodriguez's unmarked car 3 blocks from the strip mall where the operation would take place. I could see the location through binoculars, and Rodriguez had given me a radio earpiece so I could hear the communication between Madison and the undercover officers. Phoenix Control, this is Rodriguez. Subject is making the call now. Through the earpiece, I heard Madison's voice, slightly distorted by the wire she was wearing. She sounded nervous but determined. Marcus, it's Madison Torres. Yeah, I know I owe you money, but I got some cash and I need to buy. No, I'm not calling from Juvie. I'm at my mom's house. She left her debit card out and I got $400 from the ATM. There was a pause, presumably while Marcus responded. Yeah, I can meet you in an hour. The strip mall in McClintock? Okay, I'll be there at 4. Thanks, Marcus. Rodriguez's voice came through the radio. Contact established. Subject reports meeting confirmed at 4 p.m. at the primary location. The next 25 minutes felt like the longest of my life. Rodriguez kept me updated as the undercover officers took their positions around the strip mall. 2 officers posing as customers
went into the various stores. 2 more positioned themselves in a van in the parking lot. The sharpshooters were already in place on the rooftops of nearby buildings. AT-355, a beat-up Honda Civic, pulled into the parking lot. Through my binoculars, I could see the driver, a young man who matched Marcus's description from the police photos. Target vehicle has arrived, Rodriguez reported. All units stand by. A minute later, I saw Madison walking across the parking lot toward the Honda. She was wearing jeans and a red t-shirt, and I could see her touching her left earring, the panic signal, but then dropping her hand. Just nerves, I hoped. Contact initiated, came through the radio. Subject approaching target vehicle. Through the earpiece, I could hear Madison's conversation with Marcus, transmitted by the wire she was wearing. Hey Marcus, thanks for meeting me. No problem, girl. You got my money? I got 400. I know I owe 8, but this is all I could get right now. That's cool. 400 buys you 8 blues. That should last you a few days if you're careful. I felt sick hearing Marcus casually discuss selling fentanyl to my 16-year-old daughter, even though I knew it was part of the police operation. Actually, Madison said, I was hoping to get something stronger. Those blues don't really work for me anymore. There was a pause. This wasn't part of the script Rodriguez had given her. Madison, Rodriguez muttered under his breath, stick to the plan. But Marcus was talking again. Stronger, huh? I got some pure stuff, but it's expensive. And dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. I can handle it, Madison said. How much? 200 for a gram of pure fentanyl. But seriously, girl, this stuff will kill you if you take too much. Start with like a tiny amount. I was gripping the radio so tightly my knuckles had turned white. Marcus was offering to sell Madison enough fentanyl to kill dozens of people. Deal, Madison said. I'll take the gram. Through my binoculars, I could see Madison reaching into her pocket for the money. This was it, the moment when Marcus would hand over the drugs and the police would have him for distribution, but then something went wrong. Hold up, I heard Marcus say through the earpiece. You hear that? There was a pause, and then Marcus's voice again, much more agitated. Madison, why is there a helicopter circling overhead? I looked up and saw it, a news helicopter, probably covering traffic or some other story, but flying low enough to be noticeable. I don't know, Madison said, but I could hear the fear creeping into her voice. Maybe there's an accident or something. Nah, girl, this doesn't feel right. Something's off. Rodriguez was already talking into his radio. All units, be advised, the target appears suspicious. Stand by for my signal. Through the earpiece, I heard Marcus starting his car engine. Madison, get in. We're leaving. What? Why? Because I don't like helicopters, and I don't like how many random people are walking around this parking lot right now. Get in the car. This was the moment I'd been dreading. If Madison got in that car with Marcus, the police would lose control of the situation. She could end up anywhere, and if Marcus discovered she was wearing a wire, Marcus, I can't just leave, Madison said. My mom is expecting me home. Your mom can wait. Get in the car, Madison. Now. Rodriguez made the decision. All units, move in. Suspect is attempting to leave with the confidential informant. Through my binoculars, I saw police officers emerging from various positions around the parking lot, converging on the Honda Civic. Marcus saw them too. He gunned the engine and started to drive toward the parking lot exit, but an unmarked police car blocked his path. What happened next was chaos. Marcus jumped out of his car and started running toward the back of the strip mall. Madison stood frozen in the parking lot as officers shouted commands and gave chase. Within 30 seconds, 3 officers had tackled Marcus to the ground behind a dumpster. Subject in custody, Rodriguez reported. Confidential informant is secure. I was out of Rodriguez's car and running toward the strip mall before he could stop me. I found Madison sitting on a bench outside one of the stores, surrounded by police officers but looking shaken and pale. Are you okay? I asked, pulling her into a hug. I'm fine, she said, but I could feel her trembling. Mom, he was going to make me get in his car. If the police hadn't moved in when they did, but they did, I said firmly. You're safe now. Detective Rodriguez approached us, looking satisfied but concerned. Madison, you did great. We got everything we needed on tape, Marcus offering to sell fentanyl, discussing his operation, even mentioning having pure stuff that could kill someone. Did you find drugs on him? Madison asked.
A backpack full, Rodriguez said. Enough fentanyl to supply half the high schools in Phoenix, plus cash, scales, and packaging materials. Marcus Valdez is going away for a very long time. As the police finished processing the arrest, Madison and I sat together on the bench watching the scene unfold. Marcus was being loaded into a police car, his hands cuffed behind his back. He looked smaller and less intimidating than I'd expected. Just a young man who'd made terrible choices and dragged dozens of kids down with him. Mom, Madison said quietly, I want to go to that treatment center in Utah as soon as possible. Tomorrow, I promised. We'll drive up there tomorrow morning. Madison nodded, then looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen from her in months, hope mixed with determination. I think I'm ready to get clean, she said, really ready this time. For the first time since this nightmare began, I believed her. But as we walked back to Detective Rodriguez's car, I noticed another vehicle parked across the street, a different one from the night before, but with the same tinted windows and the same feeling of being watched. When I pointed it out to Rodriguez, he radioed for a patrol unit to check it out. By the time the patrol car arrived, the mysterious vehicle was gone. Marcus might be in custody, but I had the unsettling feeling that our troubles were far from over. We left for Utah at dawn the next morning, driving through the desert in my Honda with Madison's few belongings packed in a single suitcase. The radio played softly as we watched the Arizona landscape give way to red rock formations and pine forests. For the first time in months, Madison looked peaceful, no longer the hollow-eyed, desperate girl who had been stealing from me just days earlier. Mom, Madison said as we crossed into Utah, I keep thinking about that body cam footage, the one from when I got arrested. Do you think I'll ever be able to watch it? I glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Why would you want to? I don't know, maybe to remember how bad things got, so I never forget why I need to stay clean. The Mountain View Recovery Center sat on 40 acres of pristine wilderness outside Salt Lake City. It looked more like a high-end summer camp than a drug treatment facility. Log cabins nestled among pine trees, a lake for canoeing, hiking trails winding up into the mountains. But the security was real enough. Electronic gates, cameras, and staff who checked identification before allowing anyone onto the property. Dr. Sarah Chen, the facility's medical director, met us in the administration building. She was younger than I'd expected, probably in her 30s, with an easy smile and the kind of calm confidence that immediately put me at ease. Madison, Dr. Chen said, reviewing her file, I want you to know that we've worked with dozens of teenagers recovering from fentanyl addiction. It's one of the most challenging substances to overcome, but it's absolutely possible with the right support. Madison nodded, though she still looked nervous. How long will I have to stay here?
The minimum program is 90 days, but most of our fentanyl patients benefit from staying closer to 6 months. We'll evaluate your progress every 30 days and adjust the timeline as needed. Dr. Chen walked us through the facility, showing us the medical wing where Madison would spend her first week completing detox, the dormitory where she'd live with 3 other girls her age, and the classrooms where she'd continue her high school education through an accredited online program. We also have family therapy sessions twice a week, Dr. Chen explained. Recovery isn't just about the individual, it's about healing the relationships that addiction has damaged. I felt a pang of guilt at those words. Had I somehow failed Madison as a mother? Had I missed opportunities to prevent her addiction? Mrs. Torres, Dr. Chen said, seeming to read my thoughts, addiction is a disease, not a moral failing. Neither you nor Madison chose for this to happen, but you both can choose how to move forward. Madison's first week at Mountain View was brutal. The medical detox process involved around-the-clock monitoring as her body fought to function without fentanyl. When I called each evening, the nurses reported that Madison was experiencing severe nausea, muscle aches, insomnia, and anxiety attacks that left her curled up in bed sobbing. This is normal, Dr. Chen assured me during one of our phone conversations. Fentanyl withdrawal is particularly intense because the drug is so much stronger than other opioids. But Madison is getting through it. She's showing remarkable determination. By the end of her second week, Madison sounded like herself again when we talked on the phone. Her voice was stronger, and she was starting to engage with the other patients in group therapy sessions. Mom, you won't believe this, but there's a girl here named Amber who's from Phoenix, too. She was buying from Marcus before I was. She said he started targeting kids at her middle school when she was only 13. The thought of Marcus selling fentanyl to 13-year-olds made me sick, but it also reinforced that Madison had made the right choice in helping the police arrest him. How are you feeling? I asked. Better. Different. Like my brain is starting to work normally again. Madison paused. Mom, I owe you an apology. A real one. Not just the quick sorry I gave you that night when the police came. I stole from you. I lied to you for months. I sold the most important thing you owned to buy drugs that could have killed me. And through all of that, you never gave up on me. I was crying before she finished talking. Madison, you don't need to apologize anymore. You were sick. People do things when they're addicted that they would never do otherwise. But I do need to apologize, Madison insisted, because even though I was addicted, I was still making choices, and I chose to hurt you over and over. I need you to know that I understand how much damage I caused. 3 weeks into Madison's treatment, Detective Rodriguez called with an update on Marcus's case.
He's been charged with federal drug trafficking, conspiracy, and distribution to minors, Rodriguez told me. With the evidence we gathered from your daughter's operation, plus testimony from other victims, he's looking at 25 years minimum. What about his associates? I asked, the people who were working with him. We've arrested 4 others so far. Carlos Martinez, the debt collector your daughter mentioned, was picked up yesterday. Turns out he had outstanding warrants in 3 other states. The news should have made me feel safer, but I still found myself checking my locks twice each night and looking over my shoulder when I walked to my car. The mysterious vehicles that had been following us might have been connected to Marcus's organization, or they might have been something else entirely. A month into Madison's treatment, I made my first visit to Mountain View for family therapy. Madison looked healthier than she had in almost a year. She'd gained back 15 pounds, her skin had a healthy glow, and her eyes were bright and alert. Mrs. Torres, said Dr. Janet Walsh, the family therapist, Madison has been working hard to understand the choices that led to her addiction. Today, we'd like to focus on rebuilding trust between you two. Madison turned to me, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Mom, I know you forgive me for what I did, but I need to know, do you trust me again?
The question caught me off guard. Did I trust her? Could I trust her? I trust that you want to get better, I said carefully. I trust that you're working hard to recover, but am I ready to trust you completely? I don't know yet. And that's okay. Trust is something we'll have to rebuild over time. Madison nodded, tears forming in her eyes. That's fair. I know I have to earn it back. Dr. Walsh guided us through exercises designed to improve communication and rebuild our relationship. By the end of the 2-hour session, I felt more hopeful about our future than I had in months. Madison completed the 90-day program in early December, but she chose to stay for an additional 3 months to finish the full recovery curriculum. During that time, she earned her GED, started taking college-level courses online, and became a mentor for newer patients struggling with early sobriety. I want to study addiction counseling in college, she told me during one of our phone calls. I want to help other kids who get caught up in the same trap I fell into. In March, 8 months after that terrible night when I discovered my grandmother's ring was missing, Madison graduated from the Mountain View program. I drove up to Utah for the ceremony, which was held in a small chapel on the facility grounds. Madison stood at a podium in front of 40 family members and spoke about her journey from addiction to recovery. 8 months ago, she said, I was a different person. I was someone who would steal from her own mother to buy drugs, someone who would lie without hesitation, someone who had given up on having a future. She looked directly at me in the audience. My mom never gave up on me, even when I had given up on myself. She called the police when I needed to be stopped. She supported me when I decided to help arrest the dealer who was poisoning kids throughout Phoenix. And she stood by me when I made the choice to get clean. Madison paused, wiping tears from her eyes. Recovery isn't just about stopping drug use. It's about becoming someone you can be proud of again. It's about rebuilding the relationships you damaged and making amends for the harm you caused. Most importantly, it's about choosing every single day to be better than you were yesterday. After the ceremony, Madison and I drove back to Arizona together. She would be starting community college in the fall and living at home while she worked on rebuilding her life. As we crossed back into Arizona, Madison asked, Mom, whatever happened to Grandma Rose's ring? Did the police ever recover it from the pawn shop? I smiled and reached into my purse, pulling out a small velvet box. Detective Rodriguez helped me get it back as evidence in Marcus's case. It was returned to me last month. Madison stared at the ring with a mixture of sadness and wonder. I can't believe I sold this. It's so beautiful. It is, I agreed. But Madison, it's just an object. Yes, it has sentimental value, but at the end of the day, it's just metal and stone. You're my daughter. You're irreplaceable. Madison was quiet for several miles, turning the ring box over in her hands. Finally, she said, When I have kids someday, I want to tell them this story about how addiction can make you lose everything that matters, but also about how love and determination can help you find your way back. That sounds like a good story to tell, I said. Today, almost 2 years later, Madison is thriving. She's maintaining her sobriety, excelling in her college courses, and working part-time at a crisis intervention center for teenagers. She speaks at high schools about the dangers of fentanyl and has helped several young people get into treatment. Marcus Valdez was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison. His drug network was completely dismantled, and according to Detective Rodriguez, fentanyl overdoses among teenagers in the Phoenix area dropped by 60% in the year following his arrest. Sometimes I think about that night when I called 911, wondering if I made the right choice. Turning in your own child is one of the hardest decisions a parent can ever make. But watching Madison today, healthy, purposeful, alive, I know it was the only choice that could have saved her. The police body cam footage of Madison's arrest is stored somewhere in the evidence files of the Phoenix Police Department. Neither Madison nor I have ever watched it, and we probably never will. We don't need to see that version of her anymore. We're too busy focusing on who she's become. Madison still wears my grandmother's ring sometimes, on special occasions. She says it reminds her of how far she's come and how much she almost lost. But more than that, it reminds her that some things, love, family, hope, can survive even the darkest moments and emerge stronger than ever. That's the story I want people to remember. Not the story of a mother who lost her daughter to drugs, but the story of a family that fought back and won. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.